Friday, March the 9th, 2018, to you. Sincerely, I had intended to write about Australia today. However, that purpose was preempted by the big announcement that North Korean leader Mr. Kim Jong-un and the US President Mr. Donald J. Trump will meet in May. If such an encounter effectively takes place, it will be the first time a North Korean leader meets an American president. The proposal for a meeting of leaders was conveyed to Washington by a South Korean delegation after a visit to Pyongyang, where that delegation was received by Mr. Kim. South Korea's delegation was led by Mr. Chung Eui-yong, the head of the Presidential National Security Office, and included Mr. Soo-hoon, the chief of South Korea's National Intelligence Service. Let us talk about South Korea. Undoubtedly, President Mr. Moon Jae-in is aiming at inter-Korean reconciliation. He's a pragmatic, albeit dovish figure. By the way, how good have things been had Mrs. Park Geun-hye not been impeached? Since, surprisingly, Mr. Chung said that North Korea was committed to denuclearization. Personally, I have no reasons to rule out any agreement on that issue as long as North Korean regime survival may be guaranteed. In turn, this leads to a hard question for South Korea. How much Seoul is willing to pay to keep Pyongyang's status quo? Needless to say, this is another risk President Moon is facing right now. If all fails, everything goes back to brinkmanship, but South Koreans could well end up irked by being blackmailed again. Reunification. Seriously, it could happen if the price is right, but I find this outcome too unlikely. In short, President Moon is taking a lot of political risk. That said, I bet that Beijing has a lot to do with Mr. Kim's offering. First and foremost, China would not let North Korea to possess intercontinental ballistic missiles. Secondly, I believe that Mr. Xi Jinping does not like the Chucha doctrine, especially in his new capacity of Ling Shu. In other words, Mr. Xi would not want to face the consequences of a nuclear miscalculation should such predicament happen during his lifetime tenure. Did President Xi negotiate the North Korea issue as part of the constitutional amendments? How would sanctions against Pyongyang be even more crippling otherwise? Finally, there is a player we usually overlook whenever we are talking about North Korea. The North Korean people itself. How would they receive the news? North Koreans have always lauded Americans. We must handle them with care. They have been living a large-scale deception since 1953. I hope that human rights may be included in the agenda. I would now go as far as to demand a multi-party system, but it would be appropriate to ask for an amnesty so that prisoners may be released from concentration camps. Do not you think, President Moon? Before ending, I have some questions. Why did Mr. Trump give in? How much US diplomacy is involved? If denuclearization is achieved, how would it be overseen? We have some degree of knowledge about Iraq or Iran, but we ignore everything about North Korea. I must confess my ignorance. Sorry, I mean my cautious optimism. The world is still on.